Hi, it's Lonnie with Crafty Traveler, and today I'm going to be making some vent and window coverings for my RV. I am a 71-year-old woman who loves to camp and travel. Most of the time I take my little Schnauzer Snickers with me. I belong to 4 lady camp groups, and one I started in my area. One of the reasons we bought the MInnie Winnie was so I could go more on my own or with my lady camper groups. My channel, Crafty Traveler, isn't only about crafting, it's about being crafty smart. When traveling, camping, quilting, and doing crafts. Now, I've already kind of bought some. I bought a vent cover from Amazon, but I have 3 vents. So I use this as a pattern. I used some butcher paper, which costs about $3 a roll, to make a pattern. And all I did was put the butcher paper down, traced it around, and traced a pattern so that I can use other materials to make the vent cover. I'm going to be using reflectIx and fabric to make the rest of the vent covers. Next, Ernie is helping me with measuring the windows. This is the one over the dinette, width and height. And we're using a paper bowl to make the curve in the corners. Okay, I've gotten my roll of reflectIx out. The dinette window is 58 by 24, and the reflectIx is 24 inches wide. And we've made a mark at the 58-inch place. Ernie is placing a T-square there so he can hold a line nice and straight so it can be cut. Again, Ernie's taking the paper bowl that we're using as a pattern and making a mark for the corners. And that paper bowl fit in the area we want the reflectix to go around the window on the outside of the glass. Now I'm going to cut out the curve in the corners. There's one. There's 2. Number 3. And number 4. Turn it off. Hi, it's Lonnie with Crafty Traveler. And today I'm going to be sewing the blinds there. So I've got beige on one side and black on the other. This is actually the vent for one of the vents. And what I've done is I've turned it twice, and I'm going to stitch along here. I've used these big clips to hold it because my little quilting clips are not strong enough or thick enough for this thickness. So I'm turning the fabric edges over to form a hem and then using the clips to hold it in place. I'm going to stitch along with beige thread and a beige bobbin. This is the sewing machine I'm using. It's called a FOF Passport 3.0. I've had this machine a few years now. It's a great little machine, portable. I take it to classes and retreats. And this is the one when I go camping, I take it with me If I'm hooked up to shore power, I'm usually sewing something, especially if it's raining. The first of the vent covers is done, except for sewing the Velcro on, which I'll wait and do after I've finished some of the others. So all I did is I have beige on the side that's going to show and black on the other side. Now the vent covers I probably didn't need to do that, but I just thought it would look neater. And I'm the only one that's probably going to see it, so it doesn't matter, but I did it. So I have another one of these to make. And then I have the large window covers to make. So I will make those and show you when they're done. Vent covers. First one done. Now I'm working on the larger windows, and I'm doing them a little differently than I did with the vents. I'm not folding the fabric over the top. I'm stitching all 3 layers together. Here's the top and the reflectIx and the bottom and the black. So on the top I have tan thread, and in the bobbin I have black thread. Once I stitch all 3 layers all the way around, then I'm going to do a black binding, and I'll show you how to do that when I get there. Stay tuned. Well, I've got both the big blinds sewn up together. Now I have to do the binding. I'll show you how I do that. So what I've done is I've cut a bunch of 3-inch black strips. This is going to be the binding. And I've got to sew them all together and then press them and fold them over. The way I'm going to sew them together is I'm going to put them like this, and then I'm going to sew diagonally and cut it, and then when it folds over it'll be straight. So I've changed my thread to black, and I have black in the bobbin because I'm doing black fabric. So I'm placing the fabric at a right angle, and I'm going to start up at the top corner and sew down to the bottom corner. And then I cut along that diagonal line, about 1/4 of an inch from the stitching, and then it looks like this. I will press it eventually, but I've got to sew all these strips together that way. So I'll keep on sewing. Day 2 of making the blackout blinds for my windows in my RV. I showed you the last time how I sewed the strips together by overlapping them at a 90-degree angle and sewing at an angle and creating this seam, which will be pressed open to be flat. But what that does is gives a good seam and allows the fabric to be straight. I have to continue to sew more strips on to go all the way around the blackout. Now this one just might fit here, Let's see if I have to add any more to it. Probably not. So this one will be good for the smaller blackout window. And I have to sew for the other one, which is a little longer. And then what I do is I fold it in half with the wrong sides, or the side that the seam is on, I fold it in half on itself, and I press that all the way around on the edge of the blackout shade. Then once it's sewn on the first time, then I fold it back over the edge and stitch it again. And then reconnect it at the end. So that's what I'm going to do today. And I'll take you along on the little ride. Okay, I've sewn the strips together to put on the longer shade. And it did take 4 strips. Now these strips I cut, they are 3 inches wide by the width of the fabric, which is 44 inches. So I have plenty of strips to do the binding. Now I'm going to iron the strips in half, and then I will be sewing them on. The first thing I'm doing is going and opening these seams up and ironing them first, pressing them first. I've had this little iron for a long time. It works great. I can even put water in it to steam if I want to, but I just have it dry today. And this is the one I take along with me, along with my Pfaff sewing machine when I am RVing. Of course, I have to be hooked up to shore power to use it, or have my generator on, but I only use it really when I'm hooked up to shore power. I'm doing this in my RV to show you that these things can be done in an RV. You probably couldn't do them in a car. You probably could do it in a camper. As long as you've got a table where you can use these tools. But I'm sure not many people travel with a sewing machine and an iron. And that's it. Yeah, 3 seams. Now I'm going to fold it in half to the wrong side. And the wrong side of this is the side that the seam is open. Not the other side, the finished side. That's the right side. This is the wrong side where the seam is open. And I'm going to fold it in half like that. And I'm going to press it in half. This will create a nice binding for the blackout shades. This is the same way I do a quilt binding. But with a quilt binding, my strips are usually about 2 to 2.5. These are going to be 3, or these are 3 inches wide, because the blackout shade with the 3 layers, including the reflectIx, is thicker than a quilt would be. Even though the quilt has 3 layers, it's usually 2 layers of fabric and some batting, but the reflectIx is thicker. So here I'm ironing these strips in half. Okay, they're all ironed in half, and I'm going to be clipping them to my shade. I have to use these clips because my little quilting clip, Wonder Clips, don't fit. They're too small. And I'm going to do it and use the beige side first, clipping it like this. And then once I sew it, I'm going to pull it around and sew it on the other side. So I'm clipping it along. Now the corners are a little trickier and they may not be perfectly smooth, but again, these are mine. Who cares? I'll do the best I can. And I'm going to be clipping this strip all the way around my shade, and then I will sew it about 1/2 inch from the edge, just so that there's a good seam allowance. Oh, that's a small one. Okay, I'm going to finish clipping these and I'll get back to you when I start sewing. Okay, now I'm going to start sewing it. I'm not going to start sewing it right at the edge of the strip. I want to leave maybe 1 inch or 2 free, because that's where I will sew the strips together when they come around to meet. And as I sew, I've got to take these clips out so I don't run over them. And then, because I don't have enough clips, as I get around to where I need more clips, I have to reclip. So I want to sew about 1/2 inch seam allowance. This is harder to sew on because of all the thickness, but this little machine can handle it. Now I've got to come around the corner, which is a little tricky. I've got to pull on the binding a little bit so that it kind of stretches it. This is not a bias binding, it's a straight edge instead of bias. I'm sure when it's done professionally, they do the bindings on a bias, but that takes more fabric, more time to cut, and it's not that big a deal. I have to keep adjusting everything to get the amount of seam allowance I want. And I'm going to make sure I've got all the thicknesses. Now the fabric and the reflectIx are sewn together. So I've got to make sure my binding fabric is together so I don't miss it. And that's another reason I'm trying to do a little larger seam allowance so that I make sure I catch it completely. So here's where the two ends come together. And all I'm going to do, and I've sewn them right up to the edge, I'm going to do is I'm going to hold them together, pinch them together. I have to reposition this so that I can get this underneath the foot of the sewing machine and sew a seam straight across. So what I literally had to do was fold it in half fold the blind in half to get these two ends underneath the sewing machine foot so that I can sew it. Now I'm sewing it straight across. So I repositioned it to do another stitch. And then I'm going to trim about a ½ inch from that seam. I don't know if you can see it, but there is a seam there. Not a real straight seam, but that's okay because now I'm going to be folding the binding around the back and restitching the whole thing along the back side. Alright, I've turned the blind over and I'm now folding the binding over the edge and stitching it down. Well, I'm going to finish this and then I will get back to you. The first one is done. This was the shorter one. And so when it's all said and done, this is where I sewed it first, and then I flipped it over, and then here's the back. I got a couple of wrinkles in it, but not too bad. So it's all, this one's all done. Now I got to do the other one, which is longer and bigger. All right, they are both sewn. Now I just have to put them in the window and decide if I need to add Velcro, which I have some adhesive Velcro if I really need it. But I think putting these in the windows with the valances and the blinds might just be enough, but I'll have to wait and see. Well, the blinds are sewn, and I put this one in the window, and it does kind of come down below the blinds. So I'll probably end up putting a few pieces of adhesive Velcro around to hold it up a little better. But they're finished. I've been looking on the weather report for the desert in Arizona, where I will be going in January, and it's getting down into the mid to low 30s. So I'll have these to help with temperature control and light. More needing it for temperature control because it's going to be chilly during the night. During the day, it's been in the 70s, so that'll be really nice. And I'll take them out during the day and allow the sun to come in and warm up the RV. But at night, I'll need them. So I hope this was beneficial for you to see how I made my blackout blinds. If it is, give me a thumbs up. Comment, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching all the way through. This might have been a little longer than some. Take care. Stay crafty, smart, creative, and safe. Bye now.